Hello, welcome to the Construction Record Podcast. I'm digital media editor Warren Frey, and with me today I have
Matt DiBara.
And Matt, could you please tell us you are a contractor consultant, but before that you are the owner and operator of a masonry company, and you're like the fourth generation owner. So maybe you could go into that background, and that helps you with your current role.
Yeah, so my family's been doing masonry, concrete, and construction we track it now 103 years. And I'm fourth generation and current owner of DiBara Masonry here in Los Angeles.
And I assume you've learned quite a bit, probably from when you were a little kid onwards. What did you learn growing up in that environment and then running it yourself that helps you help other contractors?
Well, there are a few key takeaways. One was I got to understand both an ownership role with big responsibility because of the way my dad ran the company. He was very old school, didn't have a lot of patience. So, we had architects, engineers, and I'm 15, 16 years old. And he's like, you handle that, and he'd leave. So I learned responsibility. And then I also learned what it meant to be on the inside. I knew what it was like if, my dad showed up and on the job site and he was a little bit, he didn't really appreciate our hard work, and I got to see what the rest of the team said and felt. And so I was able to wear these two hats and kind of understand, all right, what does it mean to be an owner, and what are the frustrations and struggles? And then what does it mean to be part of a team, and how do you make people feel appreciated, and how do you deal with all the different personalities? And I also grew up when things were a little bit more old school. Like I joke that how big of a mistake I made by how loud I got yelled at. So, I mean, that was, what the generation that I grew up in construction.
And I'm assuming that when you consult with people, this is not the lesson you bring to them. You explain how to not do that.
Well, that's exactly it. Yeah, that's a lot of lessons we now teach at the Contractor Consultants and through the contractor hiring course are actually based on what I learned not to do at a very, very young age.
And what are some of the lessons you teach through the contractor consulting course?
Well, I think, in summary, or excuse me, in high level, one of them is hiring's changed a lot in 103 years, specifically in the last 5 to 7, as it relates to the trades and in construction in general. So we need to emphasize hiring a lot more than we think. We have typically, and I was guilty of this for many years in my company, but I was very sales focused, sell work, top line, big contracts, felt great. And I wasn't as focused on hiring because I knew I could go to Indeed or Craigslist or through my referral network and find people. That was 5 years ago. That's not today. So emphasizing the hiring a lot more in terms of finding and having an active candidate pool, and then culture and retention. We have one of the things in the course we talk about is called the rubber chicken retention method. And it's basically a story about how we at my company, and we teach clients this, we have a spinning wheel. And so we give out these branded poker chips that have our company logo anytime someone on the team does something that we want to see more of. And they get to redeem that once a month at this breakfast. And so they show up, they put their poker chip down, and they spin this wheel. Well, the wheel has anything from like a $5 7-Eleven gift card all the way up to, I think we have a $2 an hour raise for a year. So it's really made to motivate. Yeah, it's made to motivate and incentivize. But what's interesting is when we built the wheel out, we had a few extra squares. And so we wanted to put something funny, and we put a rubber chicken as one of the joke, like you didn't lose, you got something. And what's fascinating was I remember about 3 months after we launched this was about 4 years ago. When we launched this, I had, 35, 40 people from the company at these breakfasts. Most guys could show up, guys and gals. And I remember hearing all these squeaking rubber chickens, and one of my foremen drops his coin chip down and says, rubber chicken. He's excited. And I'm thinking to myself, there's a $2 an hour raise. I'm like, that's, what's the math on that? Yeah, a year. I'm like, and they want to win a rubber chicken. So having fun, finding your rubber chicken in your company, right? The thing that makes you unique and exciting, and focusing on that retention, making people feel valued for their hard work, making, construction fun again and exciting are things that I never thought. If you asked me 6 years ago that you'd be talking about these things, I would have laughed you right out of the building.
And like you said, 5, 6 years ago, hiring was a lot easier. What are some of the challenges you find? Because there is a labor crunch all over. I'm assuming Los Angeles is no different than Canada in that respect. And what is the path you have to take, and you advise people take to get the proper talent now?
Well, it's a multi-pronged approach. I think the biggest thing at a high level is prioritizing hiring and not underestimating it, because I was guilty of that. So it's knowing the hill you're going to climb. I mean, it's not it's a mountain. It's not a hill. So that's the first thing. And then when you know that, you say, all right, I'm prepared to climb Mount Everest. Well, you're going to take that hike a little bit differently than you would, a little weekend hike that takes an hour. So you really need a robust finding system. And I think we have 38 or I don't even know the exact number offhand right now, but there's a bunch that we teach, and everything from things as simple as finding incentives that motivate the people that come in contact with your potential candidates. So like, for example, your team, if you individualize how you're going to motivate them, like, for example, when we're trying to hire with like my construction company, we'll go to our team and we know what each person really wants or likes. Some are money motivated. Some would want a weekend getaway. Some would want Dodger tickets or sports tickets. And so we individualize the incentives. We'll sit each one down and say, hey, if you help us find XYZ position, if you know somebody in your network, we'll give you X. One of my team members is a really big sports fan. So we're like, we'll give you really great Dodger seats. I mean, he's working his butt off now to find somebody, way more than if we just pulled everybody in a room and said, hey, we're giving $200 out if you happen to find the right person.
And I would assume that there's plenty of qualified older people, but a lot of people are retiring too. So you're probably looking for younger people. Do you have to change how you look for people because they're not looking at the paper, if there even is a newspaper? they're on TikTok or Instagram or wherever else. Do you have to sort of streamline what you do and adapt in that case to find them?
Yes, it's two parts. Number one is I spoke at a hiring panel at an industry event called RoofCon, and it was interesting because to my left was somebody who was very much old school, right? And I learned that. I mean, that's how I grew up. And to my right was someone very modern, and they were kind of arguing on stage. They were like, one person's like, you need to go, shake hands and meet people and get out there. And the other person was like, no, you need to do digital and be on social media because they're young. The fact of the matter is you need to do all of it, because you don't know in your market some of the areas that aren't as good, but if nobody else is doing it and you're the first to hire that way, you've got an upper hand advantage, and vice versa. So we teach that, you need to do all these and see the results. But certainly if you're trying to attract younger talent, social media, LinkedIn is great. A lot of younger professionals are on LinkedIn. We teach a whole section called partner lists, but basically reaching out to your suppliers, your workers' comp companies, your trade schools, your universities. They do a good job of keeping up with their alumni list. So, and they want to see them do well. So that's a way for you to talk to one person at an association or school and get in front of 100 or even 1,000 potential candidates.
And you also, as we were discussing beforehand, you try to set the standard for ethical and transparent contracting. First of all, what is the reason you need to do that in the first place? And secondly, how do you do that?
Well, the big thing now, when you say ethical, you mean just in terms of on the hiring front or in general with the business?
Just in general with contracting.
I mean, here's the thing. We underestimate, and I didn't see this till probably 8 years ago, the value of this, but I think we underestimate how much our brand currency is in our company, right? And a brand is directly correlated to your ethics. So every company makes two big promises. We make one to our clients, and then we make one internally. So we say we're the fastest, or we're the best, or we're the cheapest, right? Most affordable. We make that promise outward to the marketplace, and then we have to internally make promises to our team in order for them to be motivated and follow through on what we're promising our clients. And so I think in this current climate, if you really understand brand currency, what's the promise that we're delivering, and you consistently deliver that, think of some of the national and international chains, right? It's consistent across the board, how they deliver. You know what you're getting. I think construction as a whole, and I'm seeing this more and more, is moving back to a relationship-based marketplace. And if you can be somebody who delivers on your timelines, communicates well, and really, I mean, a lot of the stuff that I remember my grandfather telling me, honest day's work for an honest day's pay, never try and retire off one project, treat every customer like they're your neighbor. Like these basic principles that my grandfather, who, was practicing and doing this in the 50s, actively building, working on commercial and residential projects, like those principles I see right now are so valuable.
And also, construction is not is similar to pretty much every other business. If you're a smaller company, you are more vulnerable to scams, and you teach how to avoid scams and pitfalls. So, what are some of those scams and pitfalls, and how do you avoid them?
In terms of if you're a contractor getting scammed by like a client, or
Or well, just if you're trying to start out as a contractor, what do you avoid? What do you look out for? People trying to take advantage of you as you're trying to start your business, your fledgling contractor business.
yeah, I mean, early on, one of the biggest threats to your business is obviously is your reputation, right? Is
Mhm.
one, and then cash flow is another. Because reputation, because you don't probably have a ton of social proof online, a ton of reviews, a ton of photos. If you get one or two bad reviews, it's much hard to stack good reviews on top of that. And the other is cash flow. So what are the things that threaten that? Well, working with the wrong contractors, not having
Mhm.
favorable payment terms is another one, and then really making sure that you're not biting off more than you can chew. I see two common pitfalls. One is coming out of the gate that they're taking on projects that are too big, basically early on not saying no. And then the other
Mhm.
part is I see a lot of companies later in the game. I did this for many years. I was getting government work, a lot of it coming to us through commercial contractors. We kept saying, no, we don't do that. No, we don't do that. And we finally did, and it was transformative for the business. So later in the game, it becomes a yes and growth oriented process where when those opportunities come knocking, looking at those carefully and saying, is this an area I can diversify in? What's the downward risk? And if it's not too bad, giving it a shot, because that's really where you find your sweet spot and can transform and modernize your company.
Okay, and finally, if people are interested in your company or in the courses you offer, where should they go?
Just head on over to the website, the Contractor Consultants, plural.com. And yeah, we'd be happy to help out. We do a lot of free coaching calls where, if you have issues, I have a whole side of the business dedicated to just helping contractors because, I know what it's like. And frankly, now we've gotten to a point where, at least in my personal construction company, we have a waiting list of candidates. So, when you get that to that point, it feels really good. And we're trying to help as many contractors as we can get there.
Okay, great. Thanks for joining us today, Matt.
Of course. Thank you, Warren.